This 4-year-old beggar girl is kicked out of her home by her own mother, but a millionaire saw everything and did something that shocked everyone. Watch until the end, you won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The Thursday afternoon was hot and muggy in Harmony Creek, a small town in rural Pennsylvania, when Arthur McKinley heard the screams coming from the house next door. The 67-year-old retired businessman was watering his orchids on the porch of his mansion when Stella's shouts cut through the air like knives. "Get out of here! Get out of my sight! I don't want to see you in this house anymore," yelled the 28-year-old woman, her voice thick with anger and the smell of alcohol, which Arthur could detect even from a distance. Arthur stopped what he was doing and approached the fence that divided the properties. What he saw shocked him. Stella was violently pushing a small child out of the house. The girl couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with unkempt brown hair and a dirty, torn blue dress. "Mummy, please!" "I didn't do anything wrong," pleaded the little one, her tears mixing with the dust on the ground. "You're a curse on my life. Because of you, I lost everything. Go away and don't come back," Stella screamed, throwing a small, tattered backpack at the child. Arthur felt something stir inside his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Since losing his wife Clara 5 years ago, he had closed himself off from the world, dedicating himself only to the mining business that had made him one of the wealthiest men in the region. His personality had always been reserved, but the loss of his wife had turned him into a distrustful man, distant from everyone. The girl remained standing on the sidewalk, looking at the door that had slammed shut. Her tears continued to flow as she clutched the backpack to her chest. Arthur watched for a few minutes, hoping that Stella would change her mind and call her daughter back, but it didn't happen. "Hey, little one," Arthur called, approaching the fence. "What's your name?" The girl raised her eyes, red from crying. "Isis," she replied in a weak and frightened voice. "Isis, what a beautiful name," he said, trying to sound gentle, something he hadn't done in a long time. "Where are you going to stay now?" "I don't know," she replied, shrugging her shoulders. "Mommy said she doesn't want me anymore." Arthur looked at Stella's house, where the curtains were drawn and no sound came from inside. The woman clearly had no intention of changing her mind. The businessman felt an impulse he couldn't explain, something that went against his cautious and distrustful nature. "Would you like to come to my house?" he asked, surprising himself with the words. "At least until your mom calms down." Isis looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Won't you kick me out too?" "I won't," Arthur replied, and for the first time in years, he really meant those words. The girl hesitated for a moment, looking once more at the closed door of her house, before slowly walking to the gate of Arthur's mansion. He opened the gate and led her to the house, noticing how small and fragile she looked walking through the spacious and luxurious halls. "Are you hungry?" he asked, leading her to the kitchen. Isis nodded timidly. Arthur prepared a simple sandwich and served a glass of milk, watching as she ate voraciously, as if she hadn't eaten properly for days. "Isis, how long has it been since you had a real meal?" "I don't remember," she replied between bites. "Mommy said food costs money and I don't deserve it." These words hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He began to realize that the situation was much more serious than he had initially imagined. The expulsion hadn't been an impulsive act of anger. There was something deeper going on. When Isis finished eating, Arthur took her to one of the guest rooms. "You can rest here," he said. "Tomorrow we'll talk to your mum." "She won't want me back," Isis murmured, sitting on the large bed. "She said I'm a curse." "No child is a curse," Arthur replied, feeling a growing anger towards Stella. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about little Isis, alone in a strange room, rejected by her own mother. For the first time in 5 years, he questioned the type of man he had become. Isolated, distrustful, living only to accumulate more wealth. The next morning, he went to check on Isis and found her sitting on the floor, drawing on a piece of paper she had found. The drawing showed a house with dark windows and what appeared to be a basement. "What is that you're drawing?" Arthur asked. "It's the house where I used to live," Isis replied. "There's a dark place underneath where I stayed when Mommy was angry." Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. The drawing revealed much more than a simple maternal tantrum. There was something sinister in that child's story, and he was beginning to realize that he had gotten involved in something much more complex than he had imagined. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Donna Silva, the local social worker whom he had known for years. "Arthur, I heard you're taking care of Stella Santos's daughter. I need to talk to you urgently. There are things about this child you need to know." Donna Silva arrived at Arthur's mansion an hour after the phone call. At 45 years old, she maintained the serious and determined demeanor that had always characterized her, but there was something in her eyes that revealed deep concern. Arthur greeted her in the living room, where Isis was playing silently in the corner with some old toys he had found in the attic. "We need to talk alone," Donna said, looking meaningfully at the child. Arthur took Isis to the kitchen, where she could draw while they talked. When he returned, Donna had already opened a folder full of documents on the table. "Arthur, what do you know about Stella Santos?" she asked, sitting in the leather armchair. "Very little," he admitted. "I know she moved here a few years ago, worked in a few places in town, but I always kept my distance." "Why?" Donna took a deep breath before answering. "Because Isis isn't her biological daughter." Donna's words echoed in the room like thunder. Arthur felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "What do you mean she's not her biological daughter?" "Stella informally adopted Isis when the child was approximately 6 months old. There is no official documentation of this adoption. No paper to prove legal maternity," Donna explained, flipping through the documents. "I started investigating a few weeks ago when we received anonymous complaints about child neglect." Arthur got up and walked to the window, watching Isis in the kitchen. The girl was drawing intently, oblivious to the conversation that would change her life forever. "But then, who are her real parents?" "That's the question," Donna said, putting the papers together. "We can't find birth records, certificates, anything. It's as if Isis didn't officially exist until she appeared with Stella." "That's impossible," Arthur murmured. "A child doesn't just disappear. It happens more than you imagine, especially in small rural towns. Families in vulnerable situations, home births without registration, children who end up being raised by people who aren't their biological parents." Arthur sat back down, processing the information. "And Stella? Did she never say anything about it?" "Stella always claimed that Isis was her daughter, but yesterday, after the incident, a neighbor contacted me and told me something interesting." Donna paused, as if weighing her words. "She said she saw Stella arriving in town 4 years ago with the child already older, claiming to have come from Philadelphia. But when we investigated, we found no record of Stella in Philadelphia. So she lied about everything." "It seems so." "And there's more." Donna opened another document. "Stella is in debt to local loan sharks, gambling debts. Many people in town know, but no one talks openly." Arthur felt a growing anger taking over his chest. "She kicked a child out of the house because of gambling debts?" "It's not just that." Donna hesitated again. "I received information that there may be an inheritance involved. Apparently, a man named Samuel Olson passed away 2 months ago and left money to a child. The name on the documents is Isis. Samuel Olson, never heard of him. He was a farmer from the Lancaster County, rich, with no known children. The lawyer handling the will, Craig Walker, is looking for a child named Isis to deliver the inheritance." Arthur got up again, agitated. "You think Stella found out about the inheritance and kicked Isis out so she could run away without the responsibility of taking care of her, and maybe try to appropriate the money somehow?" Donna completed. It's just a theory, but it makes sense considering her behavior. At that moment, Isis appeared at the door of the room, holding a new drawing. "Uncle Arthur, can I show you my drawing?" "Sure, little one," he said, trying to hide the turmoil of emotions in his voice. The drawing was different from the previous one. It showed a large house with many windows, flowers in the garden, and a small figure smiling at the door. "It's the house where I want to live," Isis explained. "A house where no one yells." Donna and Arthur exchanged meaningful glances. The child's innocence contrasted brutally with the complexity of the situation she was unknowingly involved in. "Isis, do you remember anything from when you were very little?" "Before living with Stella?" Donna asked gently. The girl frowned, concentrating. "Sometimes I dream of a lady who sang to me. She had white hair and smelled like cornbread. Do you remember where that was?" "It was in a house with many birds, and there was a big tree in the yard." Isis spoke as if she was seeing the scene again. "But Mommy Stella said I made it all up." Arthur felt his heart race. That description seemed too real to be the invention of a 4-year-old. "Donna, what happens now?" he asked when Isis returned to the kitchen. "Legally, the situation is complicated. Stella is still considered the legal guardian of Isis, even without official adoption documentation. But with the evidence of neglect and abandonment, I want to keep her," Arthur said, surprising himself with the firmness of his own voice. "Arthur, are you sure? Raising a child is a huge responsibility, especially one who has been through trauma." "I'm sure," he replied, looking at Isis in the kitchen. "For the first time in 5 years, I'm sure of something." Donna nodded slowly. "I'm going to start the legal procedures, but you need to know that this can be a long and complicated battle." At that moment the phone rang. Arthur answered and heard an unknown male voice. "Hello, this is Craig Walker, attorney. I'm looking for a child named Isis. I heard she might be with you. I need to talk urgently about an inheritance that belongs to her." Craig Walker arrived at Arthur's mansion in the late afternoon the next day. He was a 52-year-old man, thin and elegant, with gold-rimmed glasses that reflected his experience in law. He carried a brown leather briefcase and a serious expression that immediately made Arthur tense. "Mr. McKinley, thank you for receiving me," Craig said, shaking Arthur's hand. "The situation is more delicate than I imagined when I learned that the child was with you." They sat in the library while Isis played in the garden under the care of Mary, the housekeeper Arthur had called to help with the girl. Donna was also present, having returned to accompany the conversation. "Mr. Walker, first of all, I need you to know that we have discovered that Isis is not Stella Santos's biological daughter," Donna began. "Interesting," murmured the lawyer, adjusting his glasses. "That explains some inconsistencies I found in the documents." "What kind of inconsistencies?" Arthur asked. Craig opened his briefcase and took out a stack of papers. "Samuel Olson, my client who passed away 2 months ago, left very specific instructions about his inheritance. He wanted all his assets to go to a child named Isis who, according to him, lived with a woman named Stella Santos in Harmony Creek." "How did Samuel know Isis?" Donna inquired. "That's the strange part," Craig replied, flipping through the documents. "Samuel never mentioned kinship with the child. He only said that he had a moral debt to her and that he needed to correct a past mistake." Arthur felt a chill down his spine. "What kind of mistake?" "I can't specify." Samuel was very reserved about this matter, but he made it clear that the inheritance should only be delivered if the child is in a safe and loving environment. "How much money are we talking about?" Donna asked. "Approximately $2 million, plus a rural property in Lancaster County," Craig replied calmly. Silence took over the room. Arthur tried to process the information. A 4-year-old child had inherited a fortune from a man she apparently didn't even know. "That explains a lot," Donna murmured. "If Stella knew about the inheritance—" "Exactly," Craig agreed. "When I tried to contact Stella Santos to inform her about the inheritance, I discovered that she had disappeared from the town. The neighbors told me that she kicked the child out of the house and fled that same night. She fled. Arthur got up abruptly. When was this? 3 days ago. On the same day that you took Isis in. Arthur walked to the window, watching the girl in the garden. She was sitting under a tree, drawing in a notebook he had bought for her. She looked so small and vulnerable. Mr. Walker, there's something else you're not telling us, Donna said, noticing the lawyer's hesitation. Craig sighed deeply. Samuel asked me to investigate Isis's situation before delivering the inheritance. What I discovered is disturbing. What is it? Arthur asked, turning to him. I found evidence that Stella falsified documents to pass herself off as Isis's mother. Fake birth certificate, invented medical records, all the child's documentation is fraudulent. The revelation landed like a bomb in the room. Donna covered her face with her hands, while Arthur felt the anger rising in his chest. Why didn't Samuel report this to the authorities? Donna asked. Because he himself was involved in forging the documents, Craig replied in a low voice. Samuel confessed in a sealed letter that was only to be opened after his death. He had helped Stella obtain the false documents 4 years ago in exchange for financial favors. Oh my God, Arthur murmured, and now he wanted to clear his conscience by leaving money for the child? Exactly. But there's more. Samuel wrote that Stella had told him she found Isis abandoned on a road, but he never believed that version. He suspected that the child had been taken from somewhere. Taken? Donna straightened up in her chair. Are you suggesting that Isis may have been kidnapped as a baby? Craig completed. Samuel spent the last few months trying to find out the truth, but he passed away before he could. Arthur sat heavily in the armchair. With each revelation, the situation became more complex and painful. And now, what do we do with this information? We need to continue the investigation that Samuel started, Craig said. Find Isis's real family. No, Arthur replied with surprising firmness. First, we need to make sure she's safe. If there's a family looking for her for 4 years, they deserve to know she's alive and well. But Isis can't be treated like an object that's passed from hand to hand. Donna looked at Arthur with admiration. You're right. The child's well-being must come first. Gentlemen, there's something else you need to know, Craig said, taking an envelope from his briefcase. Samuel hired a private investigator to look for clues about Isis's origin. The report arrived a week after his death. What does the report say? Donna asked. That there are records of a child missing 4 years ago in the Lancaster County area, a baby of approximately 6 months who disappeared from her grandparents' house during the night. Arthur felt his heart race. Are the grandparents still alive? The grandmother passed away a year ago, but the grandfather still lives on an isolated farm. According to the investigator, he never stopped looking for his granddaughter. At that moment, Mary appeared at the door of the library with a worried expression. Mr. McKinley, the girl is having a strange episode in the garden. She's crying and saying things I don't understand. Everyone ran to the garden, where they found Isis curled up under the tree, clutching her notebook to her chest and crying convulsively. What is it, little one? Arthur asked, kneeling beside her. I remembered, Isis sobbed. I remembered the grandma who sang. She called me Little Bird and made cornbread every Sunday. Arthur looked at Craig, who had turned completely pale. The investigator mentioned that the deceased grandmother used to call her missing granddaughter Little Bird, the lawyer murmured. And she was famous in the area for the cornbread she made. The connection was forming before everyone's eyes. But Arthur knew that the more they discovered about Isis's past, the more complicated the battle to keep her safe became. And deep down, he feared what else he might discover about the circumstances that brought that child to him. 3 days had passed since the revelation about Isis's memories. Arthur had spent sleepless nights watching the girl sleep and questioning what the right decision would be. With each passing day, his affection for the child grew, but so did the fear of losing her. That Monday morning, Arthur was preparing breakfast when he heard footsteps on the porch. Through the window, he saw a figure that made his blood run cold. Stella Santos was standing in front of his door, with disheveled hair and wrinkled clothes, clearly not well. "Isis, go to your room and play there for a while," Arthur said calmly, trying not to show the tension he felt. "But I wanted to have breakfast with you, Uncle Arthur," the girl protested. "We'll have breakfast together later, dear. Now go, please." Isis obeyed, but Arthur noticed the fear in her eyes when she heard Stella's voice outside. The child ran to the room and closed the door. Arthur opened the front door and was confronted by Stella, who was visibly altered. Her red eyes and unsteady posture indicated that she had been drinking, even though it was only 9 in the morning. "I want my daughter back," Stella said, trying to push Arthur to enter the house. "Your daughter," Arthur replied, blocking the entrance. "You kicked her out of the house and disappeared for a week. I was taking care of some things, but now I'm back and I want her back." Stella tried to sound firm, but her trembling voice betrayed her. "What kind of things were you taking care of, Stella? That's none of your business, you busybody," she yelled. "You have no right to her." Arthur noticed that some neighbors were already watching the commotion from their windows. "Come in, but only to talk, and keep your voice down." Stella entered the room, looking around with a mixture of envy and contempt. "I always knew you thought you were better than everyone else in this town. Stella, let's get straight to the point. Why did you really kick Isis out?" "Because she's too much work. She's a difficult child, always crying, always asking for things," she replied. But Arthur could tell she was lying. "Or because you found out about the inheritance that Samuel Olsen left her." Stella's face turned pale instantly. She sat heavily on the sofa, as if her legs had lost their strength. "How did you... Who told you about that?" "Samuel's lawyer contacted me. He was trying to find Isis to deliver the inheritance when he discovered that you had abandoned her." Stella began to cry, but they were tears of anger and frustration, not of regret. "That damn old man. He promised me he was going to fix everything discreetly." "Fix what, Stella?" "The whole situation. He said he was going to find a way for me to keep the money without having to take care of her," Stella shouted, completely losing control. Arthur felt a fury he hadn't experienced in years. "You plan to get rid of a child for money? You don't understand. I have debts, dangerous people after me. I needed that money, and that's why you abandoned a 4-year-old child on the street? I knew someone was going to take care of her. This town is full of people who are too good to leave a child on the street." Stella's coldness shocked Arthur. She had coldly calculated Isis's abandonment, counting on the kindness of strangers to solve the problem she herself had created. "Stella, do you have any idea of the trauma you caused that child?" "Trauma? She's better here than she ever was with me. Look at this place. She has everything she ever wanted." "Material things don't erase emotional abandonment," Arthur replied. At that moment, they heard a noise coming from the hallway. Isis was standing in the entrance to the room, having overheard part of the conversation. Her tears flowed silently down her face. "Mommy, was I a bad child? Is that why you sent me away?" Isis asked in a broken voice that broke Arthur's heart. Stella looked at the girl with a mixture of guilt and irritation. "Isis, it's not like that." "Stella," Arthur interrupted firmly, "you have 2 options. Either you sign a document officially relinquishing custody of Isis, or I'm going to tell the authorities everything I know about the false documents and your involvement with Samuel." "You're blackmailing me?" "I'm protecting a child," Arthur corrected, "and giving you a chance to do the right thing for once." Stella was silent for a few minutes, looking alternately at Isis and at Arthur. "If I sign that paper, will you give me part of her inheritance?" The question was like a slap in Arthur's face. "You're trying to negotiate the future of a child? I took care of her for 4 years. I deserve some compensation." You lied for 4 years. You used false documents, and you still have the nerve to ask for compensation? Isis approached Arthur and held his hand. Uncle Arthur, can I stay with you forever? Yes, you can, little one, he replied, gently squeezing her little hand. Then it's decided, Stella said, getting up abruptly. But know that this isn't over. I'm going to find a way to get what's rightfully mine. What right, Stella? You have no right to Isis. You're not even her real mother. Stella froze in the doorway. How do you know that? Because I investigated. And I discovered many interesting things about how you got Isis. You don't know anything, Stella said, but her voice was trembling. I know you didn't find her abandoned like you always said. I know someone gave you that child, and that you falsified documents to make it seem like you were her mother. Stella turned slowly, her face pale and her eyes full of fear. If you keep investigating, you might discover things you'll regret knowing. I'm willing to take that risk. You don't understand, Stella said, her voice now almost a whisper. There are people who don't want certain truths to come to light, people who did everything to hide what happened to Isis. What people? Powerful people. People who have a lot to lose if they find out where she was all these years. Stella left the house without saying anything more, leaving Arthur with more questions than answers. He looked at Isis, who was still holding his hand, and realized that he had gotten into something much bigger and more dangerous than he had imagined. That afternoon, while Isis was sleeping, Arthur called Craig. We need to speed up the investigation. Stella told me some things today that made me realize there may be people trying to cover up what happened to Isis. Arthur, maybe it's best to go slowly. If there really are powerful people involved. I'm not going to stop, Arthur said with determination. Isis deserves to know the truth about who she is, and I'm going to give that to her, no matter the cost. A week had passed since the confrontation with Stella, and Arthur had hired Evan Smith, a 39-year-old private investigator recommended by Craig. Evan had a solid reputation in complex cases and a discretion that would be essential to protect Isis during the investigations. That Friday afternoon, Evan arrived at the mansion with a folder full of documents and a grave expression that immediately worried Arthur. I found some disturbing things, Evan said, sitting in the library. But before I start, I need to know, are you prepared to discover truths that may completely change your perspective on this situation? I am, Arthur replied, although he felt a knot in his stomach. I started by investigating the disappearance of the child in Lancaster County 4 years ago. What I discovered is that the official story doesn't match the facts. Evan opened the folder and showed photographs of a farm. This is the property of the Bennett family, where the child disappeared. Barbara Bennett was the grandmother who raised the granddaughter alone after the parents died in an accident. Bennett? The last name is the same as Stella's. Exactly. And it's no coincidence, Evan said, taking out another document. Stella Santos is a distant cousin of Barbara. They knew each other. Arthur felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. You're saying that Stella didn't find Isis abandoned. She took her from the house of her own family, Evan completed. And there's more. Barbara spent the last 4 years of her life desperately searching for her granddaughter until she died last year of heartbreak and depression. The revelation hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He got up and walked to the window, watching Isis play in the garden with the innocence of someone who had no idea of the tragedy her absence had caused. How did you find out about this? I spoke with neighbors of Barbara's farm. Everyone told me the same story. One night, 4 years ago, a woman appeared at the farm claiming to be a relative and offering help to take care of the child. Barbara, who was ill at the time, allowed the woman to stay for a few days. And then, on the 3rd night, the woman disappeared, taking the child. Barbara woke up and found only a note saying that she had taken her granddaughter to a better place, where she would have more opportunities. Arthur closed his eyes, trying to control the anger that was growing in his chest. Stella kidnapped Isis, without a doubt. But there are more complications, Evan said, showing other documents. Barbara reported the disappearance to the local police station, but the case was never properly investigated. Why? Because the officer in charge at the time was John Moore, who had business dealings with Samuel Olson. And Samuel, as we discovered, helped Stella falsify the documents. A web of corruption, Arthur murmured. Exactly. Samuel paid to have the case hushed up, and John made sure that no serious investigation was done. Barbara died without ever discovering what happened to her granddaughter. Arthur sat back down, processing all the information. But why did Samuel do that? What was his interest in helping Stella? This is the darkest part of the story, Evan said, hesitating. Samuel had a son who died young in an accident. He never got over the loss and developed an obsession with children who resembled his son. My God. Stella discovered this obsession and made a deal with him. She would bring a child so that he could informally adopt her, and in return he would help her financially and provide false documents. But Isis never lived with Samuel. No. The agreement changed when Samuel saw the child in person. Something about her reminded him so much of his deceased son that he couldn't stay with her. He asked Stella to take care of the girl, but promised to leave an inheritance for her in the future. The complexity of the situation was making Arthur nauseous. So all this talk of moral debt was... It was the guilt that Samuel carried for having participated in the kidnapping. He knew that he had destroyed Barbara's life, and the inheritance was his way of trying to compensate. At that moment, Isis ran into the library, holding a new drawing. "Uncle Arthur! I made a drawing of my dream grandma." The drawing showed an old woman with white hair, smiling and holding a small child. In the background, there was a farm with many animals. "It's very pretty, little one," Arthur said, trying to hide the emotion in his voice. "My dream grandma was sad today," Isis said, frowning. "She was crying and saying she missed me." Evan and Arthur exchanged meaningful glances. It was as if Barbara was trying to communicate with her granddaughter through dreams. "Isis, would you like to know more about that grandma?" Arthur asked carefully. "Can I meet her?" Arthur felt his heart break. She's not here with us anymore, little one, but maybe we can visit the place where she lived." "Mr. McKinley," Evan interrupted, "there's something else you need to know before we make any decisions about visiting the farm." "What is it?" "Barbara left a will. A will that was never executed because Isis had disappeared. In it, she leaves all her property to her granddaughter." "Another inheritance?" "A 500-acre farm valued at approximately $5 million, Evan said. "Adding to Samuel's inheritance, Isis is one of the wealthiest children in the state of Pennsylvania." Arthur was silent for a long moment. Now he understood why Stella had mentioned powerful people who didn't want the truth to come to light. With so much money involved, there were certainly others interested in keeping Isis disappeared. "Evan, who else knows about these inheritances? Besides us, only the lawyers responsible for the wills. But I received information that someone has been asking questions about Isis in the Lancaster County area. Someone who identifies themselves as a distant relative and claims to have rights to Barbara's properties. Who? I haven't been able to find out yet, but this person has resources and influence. They paid private investigators to try to locate Isis before the wills are executed." Arthur looked at Isis, who had returned to drawing, oblivious to the adults' conversation. He knew he was facing a much bigger battle than he had imagined. It wasn't just about giving a loving home to an abandoned child. It was about protecting her from people who saw her only as an obstacle between them and a fortune. "Evan, I need you to find out who this person is who is looking for Isis, and I want you to speed up the investigation into everyone involved in the original scheme." "Mr. McKinley, maybe it's dangerous to mess with this. If there really are powerful people involved..." "I don't care about the danger," Arthur said firmly. Isis deserves to know the truth about her family, and I'm going to make sure she gets everything that belongs to her by right. That night, as he tucked Isis into bed, Arthur noticed that she seemed disturbed. Uncle Arthur, you're never going to send me away, are you? Never, little one. Why? Because I dreamed that bad men wanted to take me away from you. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. Was it just a child's nightmare, or was Isis sensing the danger that was approaching? 2 weeks had passed since the last revelations, and Arthur had taken steps to increase security around his property. He hired 2 discreet security guards and installed cameras in strategic locations, but tried to maintain a normal routine so that Isis wouldn't notice the growing tension. That Monday morning, during the Harmony Creek Summer Fair that took place annually, something unexpected happened. Arthur had taken Isis to watch the folk performances in the central square, thinking that a normal activity could distract her from the nightmares that had been becoming more frequent. The local band began to play a traditional Pennsylvania Dutch tune when Isis suddenly stiffened next to Arthur. Her tears began to flow silently down her face as she listened to the melody. "Isis, what is it, little one?" Arthur asked, worried. "Grandma used to sing this song," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. "She sang it to me every Sunday after lunch when she put me to sleep in the hammock on the porch." The accuracy of the details that Isis provided was impressive for a 4-year-old child. Arthur knew that these weren't fantasies, they were real memories resurfacing. "She called me Grandpa Theodore's little bird," Isis continued, crying more intensely. "She said I had eyes just like his." Arthur felt as if he had been electrocuted. "Isis, did you say Grandpa Theodore?" "Yes. Grandma always showed a picture of him and said he was in heaven taking care of both of us." At that moment, Arthur needed to sit down on a bench in the square. Theodore McKinley had been his younger brother, who had died in a car accident 15 years ago. Theodore, who had moved to Lancaster County after getting married, and who Arthur had lost contact with because of a silly family feud. "My God," he murmured, looking at Isis with completely new eyes. "Uncle Arthur, are you okay?" Isis asked, worried about the shocked expression on his face. "I'm fine, little one. I just remembered something important." Arthur picked Isis up and left the square immediately, calling Evan as he walked quickly back home. "Evan, I need you to check something urgently. Was Barbara Bennett married to Theodore McKinley?" "Let me check." "Yes, sir. How did you know?" "Because Theodore was my brother," Arthur said, his voice choked with emotion. "Isis is my great-niece." The silence on the other end of the line lasted several seconds. "Mr. McKinley, this changes everything. If Isis is your family, it means that everything that happened wasn't a coincidence. Fate brought her to me. When he got home, Arthur called Donna urgently. She arrived an hour later, accompanied by Craig, who had brought documents that could confirm the family connection. Theodore McKinley married Barbara Bennett in 1995, Craig confirmed, reading the documents. They had a son, Ryan McKinley Bennett, who married Marina Silva. Ryan and Marina were Isis's parents. "So she really is my great-niece," Arthur said, looking at Isis, who was playing in the garden, oblivious to the discovery that would change his life forever. "There's more," Craig continued. "Ryan and Marina died when Isis was only 2 months old. A car accident on the road between Lancaster and Philadelphia. Barbara took custody of her granddaughter and raised her alone until Stella kidnapped her," Donna completed. "But that means I have legal rights to Isis," Arthur realized. "I'm her only living relative." "Exactly," Craig confirmed. "You have legal preference for custody, especially considering that you've been taking care of her for weeks." At that moment the phone rang. It was Evan, and his voice sounded tense. "Mr. McKinley, I found out who's looking for Isis. It's Roger Bennett, Barbara's cousin. He claims to have rights to her inheritance because Isis was officially dead." "How so, officially dead?" "Roger managed to get a judge to declare Isis dead by disappearance 2 years ago. With that, he inherited all of Barbara's properties when she passed away. Arthur felt the anger growing in his chest. He knew she was alive? I have evidence that he did. Roger paid to have the disappearance case never properly investigated. He wanted Isis to remain disappeared so he could inherit everything. And now that he's discovered that she's alive and with you, he's trying to prove that you kidnapped her. He's already filed a lawsuit claiming that he has more rights to her than you do. The situation was getting more and more complicated. Arthur looked at Isis and realized that the girl had stopped playing and was watching the adults with a worried expression. "Uncle Arthur, why is everyone sad?" she asked, approaching. "We're not sad, little one. We're just sorting out some boring adult stuff." "Is it about me?" Isis's direct question caught everyone by surprise. The child was more perceptive than they imagined. "Isis," Arthur said, kneeling down to her height, "remember when you talked about Grandma and Grandpa Theodore?" "I remember. Grandpa Theodore was my brother. That means we're real family." Isis's eyes widened. "We're really family?" "Yes, we are. You're my great niece." Isis hugged Arthur tightly. "Then can I call you Grandpa Arthur?" "You can call me whatever you want, little one." "I prefer Uncle Arthur. Grandpa reminds me of sadness." At that moment, Donna received a call on her cell phone. She answered and her expression became worried. "It was from the courthouse," she said after hanging up. "Roger Bennett filed a motion for a temporary restraining order this morning. He wants immediate custody of Isis, claiming that he is the closest living relative and that you are illegally detaining her." "That's ridiculous," Arthur protested. "I'm her great-uncle. But he has documents proving that he legally inherited all of Barbara's assets, including, according to him, responsibility for Isis," Craig explained. "Documents based on the false declaration that she was dead," Arthur replied. "Yes, but proving that will take time. And in the meantime, the injunction may be accepted." Arthur felt despair growing in his chest. After discovering that Isis was his family, the possibility of losing her to a man who had benefited from her disappearance was unbearable. "When does the court decision come out?" "It could be at any moment. The judge in charge is known for making quick decisions in cases involving children." Isis, sensing the tension in the air, approached Arthur again. "Uncle Arthur, are you scared?" "A little one." "Me too. But now that I know we're family, I'm not so scared anymore." Isis's innocent words gave Arthur the strength he needed. No matter how many obstacles appeared, he would fight to the end to protect the girl that fate had brought to him, and who he had now discovered was his real family. The court decision arrived the next morning, brought by a bailiff who knocked on the door of the mansion at 7 in the morning. Arthur was still preparing breakfast when he heard the doorbell, and a bad feeling took over his stomach. "Mr. Arthur McKinley?" asked the officer, a middle-aged man with a solemn expression. "That's me. I have a court order to deliver," he said, handing over a sealed envelope. "You have 48 hours to present the minor Isis Santos at the Harmony Creek Courthouse for custody evaluation." Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. 48 hours? "Yes, sir." The injunction was approved last night by Judge Michael Davies. The applicant, Roger Bennett, claimed urgency in the situation. After the officer left, Arthur sat in the kitchen with the document in his trembling hands. Isis came down for breakfast and immediately noticed that something was wrong. "Uncle Arthur, are you sick?" "No, little one. I just received news that made me worried." "Is it about me again?" Isis's direct question made Arthur realize that he could no longer hide the truth from her. At 4 years old, she had already been through so much that she deserved honesty. "Isis, remember we talked about being family?" "I remember." "Well, there's a man who says he's also your family and wants you to live with him." Isis's face turned pale instantly. "I don't want to live with anyone else. I want to stay with you, and I want you to stay with me too, but sometimes adults need to sort these things out in court." "What's court?" It's a place where a judge, who's like a referee, decides what's best for everyone. Isis was silent for a few minutes, stirring her food without eating. Uncle Arthur, if I tell the judge that I want to stay with you, will he let me? I hope so, little one. That morning, Arthur called Craig and scheduled an emergency meeting. When he arrived at the lawyer's office, he found Donna and Evan also waiting, all with worried expressions. "The situation is more serious than we thought," Craig began. "Roger Bennett isn't acting alone. He has considerable resources and a very experienced lawyer." "Who's funding this?" Arthur asked. "We don't know yet," Evan replied. "But Roger can't afford to pay for a lawyer of the caliber of Anthony Fisher, who's representing him." "Anthony Fisher?" Donna was surprised. "He's one of the most expensive lawyers in the state, specialist in cases involving million-dollar inheritances." "Exactly," Craig confirmed, "which means that someone with a lot of money is interested in taking Isis from you, Arthur. But who and why?" "I have a theory," Evan said, opening his folder. "I discovered that Roger has huge gambling debts. He owes money to loan sharks in Philadelphia, and he was desperate to get money quickly, so someone offered to pay his debts in exchange for getting custody of Isis. It's the most likely hypothesis, but I haven't found out who yet." Donna spoke up. "There's a way to buy us time. I can request a complete psychological evaluation of Isis before the custody hearing. That would delay the decision by at least 2 weeks." "Do it," Arthur said immediately. "Any extra time can help us find out what's really going on." That afternoon, while Isis was playing in the garden, Arthur received an unexpected call. It was a female voice he didn't recognize. "Mr. McKinley, my name is Lauren Price. I'm an investigative journalist and I'm working on a story about irregularities in adoption processes in rural Pennsylvania." "What does that have to do with me?" "I heard that you are taking care of a child whose case involves falsified documents and million-dollar inheritances. I'd like to talk to you." Arthur hesitated. "I don't know if it's a good idea." "Mr. McKinley, I discovered things about little Isis's case that can help you in the legal battle. But I need to talk in person." "What kind of things?" "I prefer not to talk on the phone. Can I come to your house tonight?" Arthur agreed, driven by the hope that Lauren might have information that would help him protect Isis. Lauren Price arrived at 8 o'clock that evening. She was a woman of approximately 35 years old, blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that betrayed her experience in investigation. She carried a backpack full of documents and a recorder. "Mr. McKinley, Isis's case is much more complex than you imagine," she began, sitting in the living room. "There's a network of corruption involving courthouses, police stations, and even the judiciary." "What do you mean?" "Isis isn't the only child who mysteriously disappeared and then reappeared with falsified documents. In the last 5 years, at least 10 similar cases have happened in the region." Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. A child trafficking ring. Not exactly trafficking in the traditional sense. It's more sophisticated than that. Lauren opened her backpack and took out photographs. "These children are relocated to families who pay well for them, especially children who have inheritances or properties." My God, Samuel Olson wasn't just a rich farmer. He was the coordinator of this ring. He identified orphan children with assets, organized their disappearance, falsified documents, and placed them with families who would pay for it. But Isis was with Stella, who is a poor woman. Stella was just a temporary caregiver. The plan was to transfer Isis to a wealthy family after a few years, when she was older and less likely to remember her original family. Arthur got up and walked to the window, trying to process the information. "And who would that family be?" "I'm still investigating, but I have leads that it's someone very influential. Someone who is now using Roger as a front to get legal custody of Isis." "Lauren, do you have proof of all this?" "I have documents, recordings, Witnesses, but I need more time to organize everything so that it's legally acceptable. How much time? At least a month, maybe 2. I only have 48 hours, Arthur said desperately. That's why I'm here. I want to propose a partnership. You give me full access to ISIS's case, and I publish an article that will expose this entire network before the custody hearing. Won't that put ISIS in danger? On the contrary, public exposure will protect her. These people act in the shadows. When everything comes to light, they'll back down. Arthur thought for a few minutes. It was a risk, but it might be the only chance to protect ISIS. All right. But with one condition. ISIS's identity must be protected. She's already suffered too much. Of course, I can use a fictitious name for her. That night, after Lauren left, Arthur went into Isis's room to check if she was sleeping well. He found her awake, looking out the window. Can't sleep, little one. I'm scared, Uncle Arthur. Scared of what? I dreamed that bad men were taking me away from you. But this time, you were being taken away too. Arthur hugged Isis tightly, realizing that the child's instincts might be picking up real dangers that were approaching. He had bet everything on the journalist Lauren, but now he wondered if he had made a mistake that could cost both of them their safety. The morning of the hearing arrived faster than Arthur expected. He had spent the previous night preparing Isis for what might happen, trying to explain in simple terms that they would need to talk to a judge about her future. Uncle Arthur, if the judge decides I have to leave, will you visit me? Isis asked, as he helped her put on her best blue dress. Little one, I'm going to fight with all my might to make sure that doesn't happen, he replied, trying to hide the despair in his voice. When they arrived at the Harmony Creek courthouse, Arthur was shocked to see the number of people present. In addition to Craig, Donna, and Evan, there were several journalists. Apparently, Lauren had kept her word and made the case public. Across the hallway, Roger Bennett was talking to his lawyer, Anthony Fisher. Roger was a man of approximately 50 years old, thin and nervous, who avoided making eye contact with Arthur. His lawyer, on the other hand, was an imposing and confident man who clearly dominated that environment. "Mr. McKinley," a female voice called. It was Lauren Price, approaching with a triumphant smile. The article was published this morning in the main newspapers in the state. The headline is, "Corruption Ring Uses Orphan Children for $1 million Schemes." And how does that help us today? Judge Michael Davies must have already read it. Public pressure always influences judicial decisions, especially in cases involving children. At that moment, Isis pulled on Arthur's sleeve. "Uncle, that man over there is looking at me in a strange way." Arthur followed Isis's gaze and saw an elegant man of approximately 60 years old watching them from afar. There was something familiar about that face, but he couldn't identify what. "Evan," Arthur called. "Do you know who that man in the grey suit is?" Evan looked in the indicated direction, and his face turned pale. "That's Dr. Harold Sampson, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the Lancaster County area." "What's he doing here?" "Good question. Officially, he has no connection to this case. The hearing was called at 10 o'clock. Judge Michael Davies was a serious man of approximately 55 years old, who examined everyone present with a penetrating gaze before starting. "This is a complex case involving the custody of a minor," he began. "I want to make it clear that my only concern is the well-being of the child Isis." Anthony Fisher stood up first. "Your Honor, my client, Roger Bennett, is the cousin of the deceased Barbara Bennett, grandmother of the minor. He legally inherited all family responsibilities when the child was declared dead." "Objection," Craig interrupted. "The declaration of death was based on false information. The child was never dead." "That's irrelevant," Anthony replied. "At the time of the declaration, there was no evidence that the child was alive. My client acted in good faith." The judge made notes before addressing Isis. "Isis, can you come closer to my desk?" The girl looked at Arthur, who encouraged her with a nod. She walked to the judge with small and hesitant steps. "Isis, do you know why we're all here today?" the judge asked in a gentle voice. "To decide who I'm going to live with," she replied in a low voice. "Exactly. And can you tell me who you would like to live with?" "With Uncle Arthur. He takes good care of me and makes me feel safe." "And do you know that gentleman over there?" the judge asked, pointing to Roger. Isis looked at Roger and shook her head negatively. "I've never seen him before." "Your Honor," Anthony interrupted, "the child is too young to make decisions about her own custody. Furthermore, she has been influenced by Mr. McKinley." At that moment, Donna stood up. "Your Honor, I request that the evidence about the corruption ring involving falsified documents that were discovered during our investigations be presented." The judge nodded, and Craig began to present the documents that proved the falsification of Isis's birth certificate, Samuel Olson's involvement, and the connections with similar cases in the region. "Your Honor," Craig said, "this isn't just a custody dispute. It's about protecting a child who was a victim of a criminal network that may still be active." It was then that something unexpected happened. Dr. Harold Sampson stood up and asked to speak. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak as an interested party in this case." "What is your interest, Dr. Sampson?" the judge asked. "I am the true financier of Mr. Roger Bennett's custody action," he said, causing a stir in the room. Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Finally, the man behind everything had revealed himself. "And what is your motivation?" the judge continued. Dr. Harold took a deep breath before answering. "Because Isis Santos is my biological granddaughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Isis looked confused from one adult to another, not understanding what was happening. "How so biological granddaughter?" the judge asked. "Ryan McKinley Bennett, Isis's father, was my adopted son. I adopted him when he was 5 years old, after his parents died. He took the surname McKinley because of Barbara's adopted family. But legally, he was my son." Arthur stood up abruptly. "That's a lie! Ryan was the son of my brother Theodore." "No, Mr. McKinley. Ryan was an orphan when Theodore and Barbara informally adopted him, but the legal adoption was done by me, who had better financial conditions to raise the child." Craig requested a break to examine the documents that Dr. Harold presented. After 20 minutes, he returned with a somber expression. "Your Honor, the documents appear authentic. Dr. Harold Sampson really legally adopted Ryan in 1994. Arthur felt the world collapsing around him. If Dr. Harold was legally Isis's grandfather, he would have absolute priority in custody. "Why didn't you ever claim custody before?" the judge asked. "Because I didn't know she was alive. When Ryan and Marina died, Barbara told me that the child had also died in the accident. I only found out the truth when I learned that she had resurfaced alive." "And why use Roger as an intermediary instead of requesting custody directly?" Dr. Harold hesitated before answering. "Because I'm 68 years old and have health problems. I thought it would be better for a younger man to assume legal responsibility, but that I could be present in the child's life." Lauren Price stood up. "Your Honor, Dr. Harold Sampson is lying. He knew that Isis was alive for at least 2 years and was one of the funders of the relocation network for orphaned children." "Do you have proof of these accusations?" the judge asked. "I have documents that show bank transfers from Dr. Harold to accounts controlled by Samuel Olson." Dr. Harold defended himself. "These transfers were legitimate investments in agricultural businesses. They have nothing to do with children." The judge banged the gavel. "Given the complexity of the allegations and the evidence presented, I'm going to determine a 1-week recess for complete analysis of all documents. During this period, the minor will remain under the current care of Mr. Arthur McKinley, but under judicial supervision." When they left the courthouse, Isis held Arthur's hand tightly. "Uncle Arthur, that man who said he's my grandpa, he looks like the bad people in my dreams." Arthur looked at the girl and realized that once again her instincts were picking up something that the adults had missed. Dr. Harold Sampson may have had legal documents, but there was something sinister in his motivations that he still needed to discover. During the week of judicial recess, Arthur delved headfirst into the investigations about Dr. Harold Sampson. Evan had discovered disturbing information that completely changed the perspective on the case. "Arthur, you need to see this," Evan said, arriving at the mansion on a rainy Thursday morning. "I found medical records that Dr. Harold tried to hide. They met in the library while Isis played in the room, protected from the revelations that could further shake her already unstable world. Dr. Harold Sampson has been hospitalized 3 times in the last 5 years in psychiatric clinics," Evan revealed, showing medical documents. "Diagnosis: obsessive-compulsive disorder related to orphaned children." "What do you mean?" Arthur asked, feeling a chill down his spine. After Ryan's death, he developed a morbid obsession with saving orphaned children. He even tried to adopt 4 different children, but he was always rejected by social services due to his inappropriate behavior. Donna, who had arrived minutes before, turned pale. "What kind of inappropriate behavior?" "He created instant possessive bonds, installed cameras in the children's rooms to protect them, and even hired private security guards to follow them to school." Arthur got up and walked to the window, watching Isis play innocently. "So all this story of wanting Roger as legal guardian was a lie?" "Completely. Dr. Harold wants total control over Isis. Roger would just be a legal facade while he manipulated every aspect of her life." "And the documents he presented about Ryan's adoption?" "They're authentic, but I discovered something important," Evan said, taking another paper from the folder. "Ryan's adoption was annulled when he turned 18, at Ryan's own request. He wanted to legally disassociate himself from Dr. Harold." "Why?" "According to witnesses I interviewed, Dr. Harold had become excessively controlling. Ryan couldn't have a normal life. That's why he moved to Lancaster County and took the surname McKinley." Donna sighed deeply. "That means Dr. Harold has no legal rights to Isis." "Not anymore," Evan confirmed. "The annulment of the adoption severed all legal ties between them." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Lauren Price, and her voice sounded urgent. "Arthur, I need to talk to you immediately. I discovered something about Dr. Harold that changes everything." "What is it?" "I can't talk on the phone. I'm coming there now." Lauren arrived 30 minutes later, wet from the rain, and with an expression of urgency that made everyone nervous. "Dr. Harold Sampson isn't just a businessman obsessed with children," she said, taking documents out of a waterproof folder. "He's the leader of the entire relocation network for orphaned children that we discovered." "How did you find out about this?" Arthur asked. "One of my sources in the original investigation decided to speak. It's a woman who worked for Dr. Harold for years and couldn't take the weight on her conscience anymore." Lauren opened the documents on the table. "Dr. Harold identifies orphaned children with significant inheritances through a network of informants in courthouses, hospitals, and public agencies. Then he organizes their disappearance and places them temporarily with families like Stella." "And what was the ultimate goal?" "After a few years, when the children are older and more malleable, he presents himself as a savior and assumes legal custody. With that, he controls all the inheritances and properties of the children." Evan spoke up. "How many children are involved in this?" "At least 15 in the last 8 years. Isis was just the latest." Arthur felt a growing fury. "And where are these children now?" "Scattered on rural properties that Dr. Harold owns. Officially they are adopted children, but in practice they live isolated, without contact with the outside world." "That's false imprisonment!" exclaimed Donna. "Exactly, but he's very careful. He bribes local authorities, pays expensive lawyers, and keeps the children in adequate conditions so that there are no reports of abuse." At that moment, they heard light footsteps coming down the stairs. Isis appeared at the door of the library, holding her drawing book. "Uncle Arthur, I made a new drawing," she said, showing the page. The drawing showed a large house surrounded by high walls, with several children looking out the windows. In the center, a dark figure watched them all. "Isis, what is that you drew?" Arthur asked, trying to hide the disturbance in his voice. "It's the place in my nightmares. There are many sad children there, and a man who keeps watching them all the time." Lauren and Evan exchanged meaningful glances. Isis's nightmares seemed to be connected with repressed memories or some kind of extrasensory perception about the danger that surrounded her. "Little one, have you ever been to that place?" Donna asked gently. "I don't know. Sometimes it seems like it. Sometimes it seems like it's just a bad dream." That afternoon, after Isis fell asleep for her nap, the adults made a crucial decision. "We need to present all this evidence to the judge before the next hearing," Craig said. "But will he believe it? Dr. Sampson has a lot of influence," Donna worried. "We have no choice," Arthur replied. "And we have something that Dr. Sampson didn't expect, witnesses willing to speak," Lauren confirmed. "My source inside his organization agreed to testify. She has documents, recordings, concrete evidence of everything." "What's her name?" Evan asked. "Miriam Bennett. She was Dr. Sampson's personal secretary and coordinated his special projects." "Bennett," Arthur frowned. "Related to Barbara?" "Distant cousin. That's how Dr. Sampson found out about Isis. Miriam had access to Barbara's death records and discovered that there was an unlocated granddaughter. And why did she decide to speak now? Because Dr. Sampson is planning something for the next hearing, something she considers too extreme, even by his standards." "What kind of thing?" Arthur asked, already fearing the answer. "He's preparing a false psychiatric report claiming that you suffer from mental disorders that make you unfit to care for a child. He's already paid 3 psychiatrists to sign the document." The revelation shocked everyone. Dr. Sampson was willing to destroy Arthur's reputation to get Isis. "But that's not all," Lauren continued. "If the plan doesn't work at the hearing, he has a plan B." "What?" "Kidnap Isis and take her to one of his properties in another state where it would be impossible to locate her." Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The situation had become much more dangerous than he had imagined. When would that happen? Tomorrow night, the eve of the final hearing. At that moment, everyone realized that they were in a race against time. It was no longer just a legal battle. It was a matter of protecting Isis from a man who had proven to be capable of anything to get what he wanted. "What do we do?" Donna asked. "We prepare a trap," Arthur replied with a determination that surprised even himself. "If Dr. Sampson wants Isis, he'll have to go over my dead body first." Friday night was tense at Arthur's mansion. He had coordinated with Evan and Donna a plan to protect Isis and, at the same time, obtain concrete evidence of Dr. Sampson's criminal intentions. Additional cameras were installed discreetly around the property, and 2 private security guards were positioned in strategic points. Isis, sensing the tension in the air, had been more affectionate than normal during dinner. "Uncle Arthur, are you worried about something?" "Just about boring adult things, little one. Nothing you need to worry about." "Can I sleep in your room tonight? I'm afraid of my nightmares." Arthur agreed, thinking it would be safer to have her close by during the night. At 9 o'clock, she was already sleeping soundly in the double bed, hugging the teddy bear he had bought for her. Midnight arrived without any sign of suspicious movement. Arthur began to wonder if Lauren had been mistaken about Dr. Sampson's plans when Evan called from his observation post. "Arthur, 3 cars just stopped on the road, 200 yards from your house. The headlights are off." "How many people?" "From what I can see, at least 6 men. They're waiting for some signal." Arthur checked if Isis was still asleep and went silently down to the living room, where there was a communication equipment connected to the cameras. On the screens, he could see dark figures moving around his property. At 12:30 a.m., Arthur's phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mr. McKinley," said a voice he recognized as being Dr. Sampson's. "I hope you're awake. What do you want?" "I want to propose a deal. Hand over Isis voluntarily tonight, and I guarantee she will be well taken care of. Resisting will only create trauma for her." "I'm never going to hand over Isis to you." "Mr. McKinley, I have 6 armed men around your house. I don't want anyone to get hurt, especially the child." Arthur felt the blood run cold in his veins. "You're threatening a 4-year-old child." "I'm trying to avoid a traumatic situation. Isis belongs with me. I'm the only one who can give her the life she deserves. The life she deserves is with people who love her, not with someone who sees her as property." 3 minutes, Mr. McKinley. "If you don't bring the child to the gate in 3 minutes, my men will come in." The call was terminated. Arthur ran to the room and found Isis still sleeping. For a moment, he considered the possibility of actually handing her over to avoid violence. But then he remembered all the other children that Dr. Sampson had collected over the years. "Evan," he called quickly, "they're going to act in 3 minutes. I've already called the police, but they'll take at least 15 minutes to arrive." "What now?" "Execute Plan B. Me and the security guards will create a distraction while you leave through the back with Isis." Arthur woke Isis gently. "Little one, we need to play a game now." "What game?" she asked, still sleepy. "Let's pretend we're spies, and we need to leave the house without anyone seeing us." Isis, despite being confused, let herself be carried away by the game. Arthur dressed her quickly and carried her down the back stairs towards the garden, where there was a secret exit that led to a parallel road. When they were almost reaching the back wall, they heard noises in the front of the house. Loud voices, heavy footsteps, and the sound of something being forced. "Uncle Arthur, this isn't a game, is it?" Isis asked, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. "No, little one, but everything will be okay, I promise." They managed to leave the property through the back and were walking along the dark road when they heard cars approaching. Arthur carried Isis to a nearby thicket where they hid. "Mr. McKinley!" shouted Dr. Sampson's voice from afar. "I know you're around. You can't run forever." Isis trembled in Arthur's arms. "Uncle, that's the man from my nightmares. I know, little one, but he'll never be able to take you." They remained hidden for almost an hour until they heard sirens approaching. The police had finally arrived. Little by little, the sounds of pursuit diminished, and Arthur saw flashing lights through the trees. His cell phone rang. It was Evan. "Arthur, are you okay?" "We're fine. What's going on?" They arrested 4 of Dr. Sampson's men. 2 managed to escape, including himself. "Did they get any evidence?" "More than we expected. They found weapons, surveillance equipment, and one of the captured men had documents proving the child kidnapping scheme." Arthur sighed, relieved. "Can we go home?" "Not yet. Dr. Sampson escaped, but he may try again. It's best if you stay in a safe place until tomorrow's hearing." "Where can we go?" Donna offered her house. "It's out of town and has adequate security." An hour later, Arthur and Isis were in Donna's cozy house on the outskirts of Harmony Creek. Isis had finally relaxed enough to fall back asleep, but not before asking a question that broke Arthur's heart. "Uncle Arthur, why does that man want to take me? Did I do something wrong?" "No, my dear, you didn't do anything wrong. Some adult people get confused and do bad things. But I'm never going to let anyone hurt you. You promise?" "I promise, with all my heart." The next morning, the day of the final hearing, Lauren Price arrived at Donna's house with extraordinary news. Miriam Bennett, the witness I mentioned, not only agreed to testify, as she brought evidence that will completely destroy Dr. Sampson. "What kind of evidence?" Arthur asked. "Financial documents showing payments for falsification of children's death certificates, location records of the properties where he keeps the other kidnapped children, and recordings of conversations where he admits to having collected Isis specifically because of the inheritance." "What about the other children?" "The police are already conducting simultaneous operations on 3 of Dr. Sampson's properties. So far, they've rescued 8 children." Donna hugged Arthur. "It's over, Arthur. Isis is safe." But even with all the favorable evidence, Arthur knew that the final hearing would still be crucial. Dr. Sampson had fled, but his lawyers could still try some last-minute legal maneuver. "Isis," he said, kneeling to her height, "today we're going back to the courthouse to talk to the judge. But this time, it's to say that you're going to stay with me forever. Forever and ever. Forever and ever." Isis smiled and hugged Arthur. "Then let's tell the judge that we're a real family." As they prepared to go to the courthouse, Arthur reflected on how his life had completely changed since that afternoon when he saw a girl being kicked out of her house. Now, that same girl had become the most important thing in his existence, and he was ready to fight to the end to protect her. The final hearing took place on an exceptional Saturday morning, convened by Judge Michael Davies due to the urgency of the case after the events of the previous night. The courthouse was packed with journalists, onlookers, and authorities who were following the unfolding of one of the most complex cases ever seen in the region. Arthur held Isis's hand firmly as they entered the courtroom. The girl wore her favorite blue dress and carried a drawing she had made that morning, a house with a flower garden where two figures smiled holding hands. On the other side of the room, only Anthony Fisher was present, representing the interests of Dr. Harold, who remained at large. Roger Bennett had been arrested during the operation the previous night, accused of participating in the criminal scheme. "Given the extraordinary circumstances of this case," began Judge Davies, "I have convened this hearing to analyze the evidence presented about the criminal network discovered and make a final decision on the custody of the minor Isis." Miriam Bennett, Dr. Harold's former secretary, was the first witness. She was a 42-year-old woman, visibly nervous but determined to tell the truth. "Your Honor," she began with a trembling voice, "I worked for Dr. Harold Sampson for 8 years and was responsible for coordinating what he called special projects. These projects were the kidnapping and control of orphaned children with inheritances." "Can you be more specific about Isis's case?" the judge asked. "Dr. Harold learned about Isis through my contacts in the Lancaster County area. When he discovered that she had $2 million inheritances, he organized the kidnapping using Stella Santos as an intermediary." Miriam presented documents and recordings that proved every word. The plan was to keep Isis with Stella for a few years, until she grew old enough to accept Dr. Harold as a father figure and then assume legal custody. And what went wrong with that plan? Stella became addicted to gambling and lost control of the situation. When she found out about the inheritances, she tried to appropriate the money and abandoned Isis. The judge made careful notes. "And how many other children are involved in this scheme?" 15 children over 8 years. All orphans, all with significant inheritances. Anthony Fisher tried to question Miriam's credibility, but the evidence she presented was irrefutable. Bank documents, recordings of conversations, property records, everything confirmed her version of the facts. Next, Craig presented the documents that proved that Dr. Harold had no legal rights to Isis, as Ryan's adoption had been annulled years before. "Your Honor," Craig said, "Isis's only legal relatives are the members of the McKinley family. Arthur McKinley is the child's great-uncle and has absolute priority in custody." It was then that something unexpected happened. Isis stood up from her chair and asked to speak. "Can I talk to you, Judge?" she asked with a courage that impressed everyone present. "Of course, Isis. What would you like to say?" "I want to say that Uncle Arthur is the best person in the world. He saved me when I was scared and made me feel safe for the first time." Isis walked to the judge's desk and handed him her drawing. "I drew our house. It's where I want to live forever." The judge examined the drawing carefully. "And what else would you like to tell me?" "That I don't want to live with people who see me as an object. Uncle Arthur sees me as a person. He teaches me things, plays with me, and never yells." "Do you know that Uncle Arthur is your family?" Yes, I know. He told me about Grandpa Theodore and about how we are real family, not paper family, but heart family. Isis's simple words touched everyone present deeply. Even Anthony Fisher seemed moved by the child's emotional maturity. The judge paused to analyze all the documents presented. When he returned, his expression was solemn but hopeful. After analyzing all the evidence presented, he began, "It's clear that this case involved serious crimes against a minor and a criminal network that victimized many children." Arthur held his breath while Isis squeezed his hand. "As for the custody of the minor Isis, I consider that Mr. Arthur McKinley demonstrated not only legal capacity to care for the child, being her closest relative, but also established a genuine emotional bond that clearly benefits her development." The judge paused and looked directly at Isis. "Isis, are you sure you want to stay with Mr. McKinley?" "I'm absolutely sure," she replied without hesitating. "Then, by this court, I grant definitive custody of the minor Isis Bennett McKinley to Mr. Arthur McKinley, with all the rights and responsibilities that this implies." The room exploded in applause. Isis ran into Arthur's arms, who lifted her into the air while tears of relief and joy streamed down his face. "Am I officially your family now?" Isis asked. "Forever, my little one, forever." But the judge wasn't finished yet. "Furthermore, I determine that all of Isis's legitimate inheritances will be administered in trust by Mr. Arthur McKinley until she turns 18, ensuring that the resources are used exclusively for her well-being and education." After the hearing outside the courthouse, Donna hugged Arthur and Isis. "You did it. It's finally official." "We wouldn't have done it without your help," Arthur said, "nor without Miriam's courage to tell the truth." Lauren Price approached with her recorder. "Mr. McKinley, how do you feel now that it's all over?" "I feel like I've found my purpose in life again," he replied, looking at Isis, who was playing with the flowers in the courthouse garden. "Isis taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about choices, care, and unconditional love." "And you, Isis?" Lauren asked. "How do you feel?" "I feel like I finally have a real home," she replied with a radiant smile. "And a family that chose me, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to." That afternoon, when they returned home, Isis asked to visit the garden where it had all begun, the place where Arthur saw her for the first time, crying on the sidewalk. "It was here that our story began," she said, looking at the spot where she had been abandoned months ago. "It was here that our family was born," Arthur corrected. "Uncle Arthur, can I ask you a question?" "Always, little one. If you hadn't helped me that day, do you think we would have met in another way?" Arthur thought for a moment, looking at the extraordinary girl who had changed his life completely. "I think so. I think that some people are destined to meet, no matter the path." "So we're a family of destiny?" "We're a family of destiny," he confirmed, hugging her as they watched the sunset over Harmony Creek. That night, for the first time in months, both Arthur and Isis slept deeply, knowing that they were finally safe and that they belonged to each other forever. 6 months had passed since the final hearing, and Arthur and Isis's life had found a sweet and peaceful rhythm. The girl, now 5 years old, attended the local school, where she had become beloved by teachers and classmates. Her drawings had evolved from sad birds to colorful landscapes full of happy families. That spring morning, Arthur was preparing breakfast when he received a call he didn't expect. It was Evan, with news that would bring a new chapter to their lives. "Arthur, Dr. Harold Sampson was captured yesterday in Philadelphia. He's confessing everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. And the other children? All have been rescued and are being reunited with suitable families. But there's something else you need to know." "What is it?" "During the interrogations, Dr. Sampson revealed the location of documents that Barbara had hidden before she died, documents about Isis that changed everything we knew about her." "What kind of documents?" Come to my office this afternoon. It's better if you see it in person. Arthur spent the day intrigued, trying not to show anxiety to Isis, who was excited about a school project about families. She had made a family tree where she had placed photos of Arthur, herself, and drawings representing her deceased parents and grandparents. Uncle Arthur, the teacher said that our family is special because we chose each other, she commented during lunch. The teacher is right, and you know what else is special? What? That our family is always growing. Sometimes new people appear who are also part of our story. That afternoon in Evan's office, Arthur discovered something that would change his understanding of the entire journey they had lived. Barbara left these documents hidden in a box buried in the backyard of the farm. Evan explained, showing papers yellowed by time. The police found it following the instructions that Dr. Sampson provided. What do they say? They're letters that Barbara wrote to Isis, one for each birthday she missed with her. 20 letters in total, from when she disappeared until shortly before Barbara died. Arthur took one of the letters with trembling hands, the delicate handwriting of an elderly woman who had never given up on finding her granddaughter. But there's something more important, Evan continued. At the bottom of the box, Barbara left a secret will that was never officially registered. Another will? Yes. And in it, she doesn't just leave properties to Isis. She leaves a revelation about the true identity of her parents. Arthur felt his heart race. What do you mean? Ryan and Marina didn't die in an accident like everyone thought. They were murdered. The revelation hit Arthur like lightning. Murdered? By whom? By order of Dr. Harold Sampson himself. When Ryan turned 18 and annulled the adoption, Dr. Harold was furious. He discovered that Ryan had married and had a daughter and decided to eliminate the parents to stay with the child. My God! Barbara discovered the truth but didn't have enough evidence. That's why she hid these documents, hoping that one day someone could do justice. Evan showed more papers. Here are the names of the hired killers, payment records, and even recordings that Barbara managed to make secretly. Does Dr. Sampson know that these documents exist? Now he knows. That's why he confessed everything. He realized that he had no way to hide anymore. Arthur sat heavily in the chair. How am I going to tell this to Isis? Maybe you don't need to tell her now. She's only 5 years old. But when she grows up, she'll have the right to know the full truth about her parents. That night, Arthur watched Isis play in the garden, unaware that he had just discovered that her parents were victims of a crime. She ran among the flowers, laughing and humming a song she had learned at school. Uncle Arthur, she ran to him, can I ask you a question? Always, little one. Do you think my parents are proud of me? The question caught Arthur off guard. Why are you thinking about that? Because today at school, the teacher talked about people who left for heaven, and I was wondering if they know that I'm happy now. Arthur knelt down to her height. I'm absolutely sure that your parents are very proud of you, and you know why? Why? Because you've become a brave, kind, and loving girl. Even going through difficult things, you chose to be a good person. And do they know that you take good care of me? Yes, they know. And I'm sure they're happy because you found a family that loves you. Isis hugged Arthur tightly. I love our family, Uncle Arthur. I love our family too. A week later, Arthur made an important decision. With Donna's help, he organized a special ceremony in the garden of the farm where Barbara had lived. The new owner, a young couple who had bought the land, had allowed them to visit the place. Isis, Arthur said as they walked through the property, this was the place where your grandma Barbara lived. It's here that you lived your first months of life. Isis looked around with curiosity. It's pretty here. It has many birds, just like in my dreams. They went to a large tree where Arthur had asked to be placed a plaque in memory of Barbara. Your grandma left some letters for you. When you get older, you can read them. Letters for me? Yes. She wrote to you every year, even without knowing where you were. Isis touched the plaque with childish curiosity. Did she love me even without seeing me? Very much. She never stopped looking for you. At that moment, as if it were a sign, a robin landed on the branch near them and began to sing. Isis smiled, remembering the birds from her old drawings. "Uncle Arthur, can I plant a flower here for Grandma Barbara?" "Of course you can." They planted a rose seedling that Isis had chosen especially. As she watered the little plant, she said a simple prayer that touched Arthur's heart deeply. "Grandma Barbara, thank you for loving me even from afar. Now I'm safe with Uncle Arthur, but I'll never forget you." During the way back home, Isis was quiet, processing the emotions of the day. Finally she spoke. "Uncle Arthur, now I understand why you appeared in my life." "Why, little one?" "Because Grandma Barbara asked God to send someone good to take care of me, and God chose you." Arthur felt tears forming in his eyes. "And I'm very grateful to have been chosen." "I'm also grateful. For you and for our whole family, the one that's here and the one that's in heaven." That night, Arthur carefully stored Barbara's letters in a special safe, along with other important documents of Isis's life. One day, when she was older, she would have access to her entire story, the painful parts and the beautiful parts. But for now, it was enough that she knew that she was loved, protected, and that she had a family that had chosen her not out of obligation, but out of genuine love. An entire year had passed since the discovery of Barbara's letters. Isis, now 6 years old, had become a vibrant and confident child, but still carried with her an emotional wisdom that impressed everyone around her. She was in the first grade of school and stood out both for her studies and for her ability to help colleagues who were going through difficulties. That autumn morning, Arthur received a call that would change once again the course of their lives. It was Craig with news that he didn't expect. "Arthur, I need to meet you urgently. Something has come up related to Isis's inheritances that you need to know." "Any legal problem?" "No, nothing like that. In fact, it's something extraordinary. Can you come to my office today?" Arthur left Isis at school and went to Craig's office, where he found the lawyer accompanied by an elderly woman he didn't know. She was approximately 75 years old, completely white hair and blue eyes that vaguely resembled someone familiar. "Arthur, this is Mrs. Meredith Olson, Samuel's sister," introduced Craig. "Samuel's sister? I didn't know he had family." "Nor did I know that I had a great niece," replied Mrs. Meredith with a soft but firm voice, "until I discovered this whole terrible story in the newspapers." Arthur sat down, intrigued. "Did you come from far away?" "I came from Portugal. I've lived there for 50 years, but when I found out what my brother had done, well, I needed to come personally to resolve some things." Craig explained the situation. "Mrs. Meredith is Samuel's only legal heir. With his death and Dr. Harold's arrest, she inherited all the properties and assets that were not confiscated by justice." "And how does that affect Isis?" "It affects because I discovered something that my brother did before he left this world," said Mrs. Meredith, taking documents from an old bag. "He left secret instructions for me, which should only be opened if something happened to him." "What kind of instructions?" "Samuel confessed all the crimes he committed over the years, but he also revealed that he had kept money in secret accounts to compensate each family he had harmed." Arthur was silent, processing the information. "The account destined for Isis contains $5 million, continued Mrs. Meredith. "But there's a condition that my brother established." "What condition?" "The money can only be used if Isis is raised by a family that demonstrates genuine love for her, not financial interest. And it must be applied exclusively to her education and well-being." "Mrs. Meredith," Arthur said carefully, "I don't want the money. Isis already has enough inheritances from Barbara. I love her regardless of any financial issue." The elderly woman smiled for the first time. "That was exactly the answer I was hoping to hear. My brother wrote that the real test would be to see if the person responsible for the child would reject additional money." So? So you passed the test?" But that doesn't mean I'm going to take the money away. It means I'm going to apply it in a way that really benefits ISIS. Mrs. Meredith explained her plan. I want to create a foundation in ISIS's name, destined to help other orphaned children who have gone through similar situations. ISIS would be the inspiration, but the project would help many other children. And would ISIS participate as? When she grows up, if she wants to, she can manage the foundation. But for now, it would just be a way to transform all the suffering she went through into something positive for other children. That afternoon, Arthur picked up Isis at school and decided to talk to her about Mrs. Meredith's proposal. They sat in the garden of the house, where she liked to draw after school. Isis, remember when we talked about how some bad things can turn into good things? I remember, like when I was sad and you saved me, and now we're happy. Exactly. Well, today I met a lady who wants to do something similar with your story. Arthur explained simply about the Foundation's proposal. Isis listened attentively, asking occasional questions that demonstrated her surprising understanding of the situation. So other children like me could have good families, she asked. Yes, that's right. And they wouldn't have to go through the fears that I went through. That's the idea. Isis was quiet for a few minutes, drawing colorful flowers as she thought. Uncle Arthur, can I meet that lady? Of course you can. She's at the hotel in town and would love to meet you. The next day, Mrs. Meredith visited Arthur's house. Isis greeted her with the natural kindness that she always showed with older people, but also with obvious curiosity. Mrs. Meredith, Uncle Arthur told me about the children who need help, Isis said, showing a drawing she had made, especially for the occasion, clearly benefits her development. The judge paused and looked directly at Isis. Isis, are you sure you want to stay with Mr. McKinley? I'm absolutely sure, she replied without hesitating. Then, by this court, I grant definitive custody of the minor Isis Bennett McKinley to Mr. Arthur McKinley, with all the rights and responsibilities that this implies. The room exploded in applause. Isis ran into Arthur's arms, who lifted her into the air while tears of relief and joy streamed down his face. Am I officially your family now? Isis asked. Forever, my little one, forever. But the judge wasn't finished yet. Furthermore, I determine that all of Isis's legitimate inheritances will be administered in trust by Mr. Arthur McKinley until she turns 18, ensuring that the resources are used exclusively for her well-being and education. After the hearing outside the courthouse, Donna hugged Arthur and Isis. You did it. It's finally official. We wouldn't have done it without your help, Arthur said, nor without Miriam's courage to tell the truth. Lauren Price approached with her recorder. Mr. McKinley, how do you feel now that it's all over? I feel like I've found my purpose in life again, he replied, looking at Isis, who was playing with the flowers in the courthouse garden. Isis taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about choices, care, and unconditional love. And you, Isis? Lauren asked. How do you feel? I feel like I finally have a real home, she replied with a radiant smile. And a family that chose me, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. That afternoon, when they returned home, Isis asked to visit the garden where it had all begun, the place where Arthur saw her for the first time, crying on the sidewalk. It was here that our story began, she said, looking at the spot where she had been abandoned months ago. It was here that our family was born, Arthur corrected. Uncle Arthur, can I ask you a question? Always, little one. If you hadn't helped me that day, do you think we would have met in another way? Arthur thought for a moment, looking at the extraordinary girl who had changed his life completely. I think so. I think that some people are destined to meet, no matter the path. So we're a family of destiny? We're a family of destiny, he confirmed, hugging her as they watched the sunset over Harmony Creek. That night, for the first time in months, both Arthur and Isis slept deeply, knowing that they were finally safe and that they belonged to each other forever. 5 years had passed since the creation of the ISIS Foundation. The girl who had once been abandoned on the sidewalk was now an 11-year-old pre-teen, intelligent and determined, who attended the Foundation's meetings and helped welcome the families who arrived to adopt children. That spring morning, special for marking exactly 7 years since the day Arthur had found her, Isis woke up with an idea that would change once again their lives. "Dad," she said during breakfast, she had started calling him that 2 years before, when she finally felt completely secure in the relationship, "I want to tell you something important." Arthur, now 74 years old but still vigorous and dedicated, looked up from the local newspaper that featured a story about the success of the foundation. "What is it, my daughter?" "Yesterday, when I was helping at the foundation, I met a girl named Lily. She's 8 years old and has been waiting for a family for 3 years. And I realized something. We have so much love in our house, so much space, so much joy. Couldn't we share that with someone else?" Arthur paused with the cup of coffee in the air. "Isis, are you suggesting that we adopt Lily? She needs a family, and we're great at being a family." The suggestion caught Arthur completely off guard, but at the same time, it made perfect sense. During the last few years, they had built a life so full and happy that it really seemed natural to share it. "Honey, adopting a child is a very serious decision. Are you sure you want a sister?" "I'm absolutely sure." "And Dad, you know why I'm sure?" "Why?" "Because you taught me that when we have a lot of love, it doesn't diminish when we divide it. It increases." That weekend, Arthur and Isis visited Lily at the foster home. The girl was shy, with curly hair and big eyes that carried a sadness familiar to Arthur. Lily had lost her parents in a flood and had no other relatives. "Hi, Lily," Isis said, sitting next to her. "My name is Isis. I want to be your friend." "Hi," Lily replied in a low voice. "You know, I didn't have a family for a while either. But then I found the best dad in the world, and now we have a house full of love. And you want me to live with you? Only if you want to. We're not going to force you to do anything, but if you want to try, I promise I'll be the best older sister you can imagine." Arthur watched the interaction between the girls with a heart squeezed with emotion. Isis demonstrated the same kindness and emotional wisdom that had always characterized her, but now directed to help another child. "Mr. McKinley," Lily said to him shyly, "Isis said that you like children who ask a lot of questions." "I love curious children," he replied with a smile. "What kind of questions do you like to ask?" "I like to ask about the stars, about the animals, and about how plants grow. Those are excellent questions, and you know what else? Isis also loves those things. You have a lot in common. The process of adopting Lily took 6 months, during which she visited the house on weekends, gradually adapting to the new family. Isis proved to be an exemplary older sister, teaching Lily to draw, helping her with her homework, and mainly showing that it was possible to trust adults again. On the day that Lily moved in permanently, Isis had prepared a special surprise. She had decorated her sister's room with drawings of the two together and a phrase painted on the wall, "Sisters of the Heart." "Isis, is this for me?" Lily asked, moved. "It's for both of us, because now we're real sisters." That night, during the welcome dinner that Arthur had prepared, something happened that would definitively seal the transformation of their lives. Lily, who until then had been shy and reserved, suddenly started laughing at a joke that Isis had told. It was a free, crystal-clear, unreserved laugh, the sound of a child who finally felt safe to be herself. Arthur felt tears forming in his eyes as he heard that sound. "Dad, are you crying?" Isis asked, worried. "They're tears of joy, honey. I'm thinking about how complete our family is now. And it's going to get even more complete," Lily said, surprising everyone. "How so?" Arthur asked. "Because at the foster home, there are other boys and girls who need a family. And if we manage to be happy together, maybe we can help others too. Isis smiled, recognizing in Lily the same generous spirit that she herself had developed. "Dad, I think we created a monster." "We created two," Arthur corrected, laughing. "Two girls who want to save the world." "And what's the problem with that?" the two asked in unison, making Arthur laugh even more. 2 years later, Arthur's house had become a temporary home for several children in the process of adoption through the foundation. Isis, now 13, and Lily, 10, had become natural mentors for the younger children who arrived scared and needed to learn to trust again. On that special afternoon, the eve of the 9-year anniversary of Arthur finding Isis, they were all in the garden organizing a party for Mary, a 5-year-old girl who had just been adopted by a local family. "Isis," Arthur said, watching his daughter help Mary choose flowers to take to her new parents. "Do you remember what you felt when you were little like Mary?" "I remember being scared all the time. Scared of not being loved. Scared of being sent away again. Scared of not being good enough. And what changed that? You changed that. You showed me that I was loved not for what I did, but for who I was. And you taught me that family is about choosing to stay together every day. And now you teach that to other children. It's the least I can do. You saved me, Dad. Now it's my turn to help save other children." At that moment, Mary ran to them with a drawing in her hands. "Uncle Arthur, I made a drawing of my new family." The drawing showed 4 figures holding hands, Mary, her new parents, and a larger figure next to it that she had identified as the angel who took care of me until I found my family. "Who is that angel, Mary?" Arthur asked. "It's you. Aunt Isis told me that you're the angel who takes care of the children until they find their families forever." Arthur looked at Isis, who smiled mischievously. "That's how I've always seen you, Dad. As my guardian angel." That night, after all the children had gone to their families or rooms, Arthur and his 2 daughters sat on the porch, watching the stars, as they had done so many times over the years. "Dad," Lily said, "can I ask you a question? Always, do you regret anything in your life?" Arthur thought carefully before answering. "I regret taking so long to understand what really matters. I spent years focused on money and business, thinking that that was success." "And what is true success?" Isis asked. "True success is this here. It's having you two by my side. It's knowing that our family has helped dozens of other children find loving homes. It's having transformed a tragedy into hope. And success is knowing that we're loved," added Lily. "And that we have the opportunity to love other people," completed Isis. Arthur hugged his 2 daughters, thinking about how a simple decision to help a child crying on the sidewalk had transformed into the most extraordinary adventure of his life. He had gained a family, found a purpose, and discovered that love really multiplies when it is shared. "Girls," he said, "you know that I love you more than anything in this world, don't you?" "We know," they replied together. "And you know that, regardless of what the future brings, we'll always be a family?" "Always," they confirmed, hugging him tighter. And under the starry sky of Harmony Creek, a family built by love and choice continued writing its story, a story that had begun with tears, but that had become an example that the most beautiful endings sometimes are born from the most difficult beginnings. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.